My name is Sherman Edmiston Jr. I was born in Harlem Hospital 80 years ago, and Harlem has been my home for most of my life. For my early years were in East Harlem, and when I was 12, we moved to Harlem, we moved to the Riverton. And I was very fortunate for that to happen because the Harlem itself at that time and the Riverton at that time were very special places. It was a time where the arts and learning and the music in Harlem was still thriving, and the Riverton in particular, the people who lived there were very accomplished people. We had Dolly King and Puggy Bell. You know, they were ex-professional basketball players. As you know, Dolly King played football. And we had people who were in the theater. We had many people who were in very high places in the government and police department and fire department. So we, as kids, grew up in a very enriched environment. It was an environment also that really encouraged us to really reach out and do our best and work hard and really strive to accomplish as much as we could. And you know, it even extended even to the clubs and the bars in Harlem. You know, at a certain age, we got old enough to be able to go to Jocks and Red Rooster and such. And you know, they were almost like English pubs. They were a place to go and socialize and communicate and learn. You know, looking back years later, I realized that times that I spent in Jocks and the Rooster and such, I was being taught. I learned. It was really an incredible period. It's a period also that, unfortunately, I believe, has not really been fully recognized and certainly has not been recorded. Certainly nothing has been really written about it and documented about the history of that period and particularly of that time at the Riverton itself. And I hope that somebody someday will, because it was a journey from then to what we recognize, what we see today happening in the corporate world, in the sports world, the media world, where so many people have accomplished really the highest acclaims that you could imagine ever occurring. But that was the time when it all started. That was the time when young people like myself at that time, through their education and through their struggles, were able to join the business world, the corporate world. And many people at that time became the first black this and the first black that and the first black the other. And it's interesting how today that's meaningless. Very few people today really are denoted as the first black this or that or the other, because there have been so many people in the stream of success. But I think that was really the starting point in many ways. I moved from Harlem to Brooklyn and then moved back to Harlem. Well, as I said, before I moved to the Riverton, I was living in effectively East Harlem. And I was going to a junior high school called Yorkville Junior High School, which was a pretty special school. And again, at 12 years old, I moved to Harlem. And, growing up in the Riverton at that time, the playground was the center of our activity as young people. And the director of the playground, as I said earlier, was Dolly King. And Dolly King was, at that time, it was a huge athletic person, very strong-willed, strong-minded, and very strong discipline. I mean, he really disciplined us as kids. At the same time, he was also very embracing. And when I moved to Riverton, I don't think he had even seen basketball before. And I saw the kids out there playing basketball, and I said, well, you know, I gotta get a game together here pretty quick. When I lived in the East Harlem, everything was baseball, softball, hockey, things like that. And I said, if I'm gonna have any cred up here, I gotta learn this game. And I listened to Dolly, and I watched the guys playing, and Puggy Bell, he'd be playing. And, you know, as all kids, we used to try and copy the guys we saw on the NBA, on television and such. And I got pretty good. And we began to have really hot competitive games, too, in the playground. Kids would come from all over the city to play in Riverton. And we were pretty competitive. You know, we had guys in parts of teams and such. High school, guys from high school teams and such. High school we went to, because from junior high school I went to Commerce High School. So Commerce was a very recognized basketball team. So we had guys coming from every angle. And I think it was Power Memorial, where Lou Alcindor would come by to Riverton before it became, you know, a Muslim and became a big star and such. So we had many battles. And then I became at the Boys YMCA on 135th Street. I was part of that basketball team. And we traveled to Philadelphia and places upstate and such as that. That was really very beneficial to my development. Because for one thing, interestingly, at the Boys Y, we played basketball all the time. But across the street was the Men's Y. And the Men's Y had a basketball court also. And one day, I can't recall who it was, when I was, just playing at the Boys Y, and somebody told me, he said, on Saturday mornings, 7, 8 o'clock in the morning, Jackie Robinson came over here, the Men's Y, to play basketball. Jackie Robinson and Roy Campanella. Wow. So myself and some of the other guys on the team, we'd be there at 7 o'clock in the morning playing against Jackie and Roy Campanella and other older guys, you know. And, it's the same thing always. Like when we played in the playground, if Dollar King and Puggy Bell and Pop Gates came out to play, it was rough and tough, They bounce us and pull us, shush and tug us and everything, which was part of our training, development. Same thing with Jackie and Campanella and such. It was an amazing time, because at that time, in those days, it was not extraordinary to be in the company of Jackie Robinson or Roy Campanella or Sugar Ray Robinson or Ella Fitzgerald, Sarah Vaughan. I mean, they were around. They weren't that distant from us. I mean, we knew who they were, but they were part of our lives. And when I look back again, I realize what it was like to not be friends necessarily of these kind of people, but to know them, and sometimes to at least recognize to say, "Hey kid, how you doing?" Things like that.
Set the bar pretty high.
Amazingly high.
Now you must have been, were you and Clifford Alexander kind of in the same?
Yeah, Clifford was a little older than I. And Clifford would come out to play basketball.
Cal Ramsey, I suppose,
Cal Ramsey
was probably a little older too.
No, Cal Ramsey was a little younger.
Really?
Yeah. Clifford he was an okay basketball player, you know.
I got a story for you.
Okay.
Cal tells me one time he was out there with Oscar Robertson, Clifford Alexander, and I forget who the other person was, and he was guarding Oscar. Oscar lit him up.
Of course.
Kids in the neighborhood said, Mr. Ramsey, we thought you were good, but that other guy busted your They didn't know Oscar Robertson from the Man on the Moon, you know. But that was, like you were saying, these were the people who were in the mix.
That's right. You know,
Now tell me, what was your original calling, your original vocation, and then what brought you to art?
When I graduated from Commerce High School, Commerce High School was a business school. And I took accounting and business and such as that. So my original intent was to become a businessman, was to become an accountant. That's what was my thought at that time. My parents were in business. So I was, you know, acclimated to the whole culture and idea of business. So when I graduated from high school, I was fortunate enough to be accepted in Hunter College. At that time they had a campus up in the Bronx. And this was the first class of males to be admitted to Hunter College, because up to that time it was all female. Mm-hmm. So we were the first campus, first time. So took the train up to Hunter, Bedford Park Boulevard, and went to register. And today, when kids go to register, it's all done by computer and online, and this thing they do, they walk in and everything's set, and they just go write a check and bang. In those days, registration was a nightmare. Registration was absolutely cuckoo. And as a freshman, I had no idea what the hell was going on. So I looked around at the boards that would post what the different majors were and what it was all about. And I didn't see anything about business, nothing about accounting. So I went over to an advisor and I said, I want to major in business. I want to take accounting. I want to be an accountant. He says, we don't have that. So I said, well, what should I do? He says, well, do you like chemistry, like physics? I say, yeah. He says, major in physics. So I said, okay. And that's what I did. So I was at Hunter College, and I was majoring in physics for 2 years. And then I discovered that, you know, if I spend that time in physics for 2 years at Hunter, I can transfer to City College and take engineering. So I said, okay, I'll do that. So then I went to City College for engineering. And I was there. Together with a handful of other black, primarily guys, who were majoring in engineering. And that was great. Because City College was, you know, pretty much a liberal arts school, but North Academic Campus was somewhat separated from the rest of the campus. And engineering, North Campus and engineering and physics and science, that gave you a little bit of luster, you know. So when I would venture down to the South Campus, where all the girls were, you know, I took advantage. You know? So I graduated from City College. This was, I guess, in the 60s. And during the time that I was in school, I was also very much involved just in the business community at home, even as a student, because as an engineer, I began to do work for some of the black architects, a few black architects in Ulm. So when I graduated from City College, And I went around, I was looking for a job. You know, you put together your resume and you go to architectural firms because I wanted to do things in mechanical engineering. I didn't want to go out to Long Island and Bethpage to work for Grumman and the aircraft and space firms and such that were, really much into defense. I wanted to stay in pretty much closer related to construction. I couldn't get a job. I mean, you know, I went to one architect and he said, well, you know, when I was a kid, I came out of college, I worked for free, you know, to get into it. And I said to myself, no, I can't do that. So I could not find a job for many months. Now, getting back to the Riverton, everybody in the Riverton knew that I graduated from City College with an engineering degree. And they also knew I couldn't get a job. Oh boy, his can't think of his name. He worked for the city. This has to do with Red Rooster again. The barmaid at the Red Rooster was Fanny, and it was Fanny's husband. Oh, I wish I could think of his name. But
George something.
But he one day, I don't know if it was in the Red Rooster or if I was, you know, just in the Riverton itself. He said, the city's hiring engineers, the housing authority. Go check it out. And I did. And I got a job. And I got a job as a field engineer at the housing authority for a apartment, one of the first co-ops of the city was building at the housing authority, called Franklin Plaza, 106th Street from 3rd Avenue to 1st Avenue. That was my first job. And that was exciting, being out in the field and going up and down, you know, those elevators go up and down outside and everything. And that was a real learning environment because the guys who were in the construction at that time were pretty tough guys. You know, they were pretty rough. They'd say, one thing, they would say, if you are working, if the ladder was around, don't stand near the edge. It was rough. But then, somehow I found out that there were openings at the municipal building with the city, again, Department of Public Works. And that was going to be inside, and I was going to be working, doing design and such. Someone interviewed for that, and I was hired for that. And I got a lot of good experience out of there. And I was doing municipal projects, going small jobs, like surprisingly, like renovating judges' offices. You really, boy, these guys, they're palatial, you know, yeah. And doing work in facilities and fire stations. And that's where I learned, hey, fireman, eat good. The fireman, every firehouse has a guy whose thing was to cook. I said, whoa. It's really interesting when you get out in the real world and you're involved in the fabric of the real world, and you learn all these realities of how people live and how they work and how they function and how things really are. If you're not in it, you never know it.
That's true.
And so I had a chance to really get in it and see what. So I'm working, I guess I worked for the Public Works for maybe 2 years, Department of Public Works for 2 years. And a black architect named Henry LeJean, who I was working with. And Henry had done some work with, you know, and Henry LeJean said, General Foods is hiring. General Foods is hiring engineers. And I said, where's General Foods? He says, up in Westchester, up in White Plains. So I sat down and put together a resume, drove up to White Plains to General Foods, went into the personnel office and said, I hear you're hiring engineers and I'd like to apply. That's the first time I've seen it. I didn't call and just went up. So the secretary was very nice, she said, okay, let me have your resume and wait for a moment. And she went into this office and she came out and she says, Mr. Pierce would like to talk to you. So I said, great, thank you. And I went into Mr. Pierce's office, and Mr. Pierce was black. This was in the personnel office. Mr. Pierce was black. And like you just did, I said, oh shit. Because in those days, blacks in corporate were blockers, But no, Mr. Pierce was very, very nice. And Mr. Pierce talked to me. He said, you graduate City College Engineering. He knew what that was about. And he said, we need to have some diversity. That wasn't a word back then. It wasn't a matter of diversity. It was, I'd say, we need, and I'd like to see if I can, move you on up, move you through. He says, because we haven't had anybody come here before with the same kind of credentials. I said, okay. Now, it turned out that Mr. Pierce was Bert Pierce. Bert Pierce was Judge Sam Pierce's brother. And I, as a young, when I was in college, I had campaigned for Sam Pierce. And, I'd been involved in lots of elections and things like that, and campaigns and all. And so I said, Sam Pierce, Bert Pierce. I said, oh. So I got the job at General Foods Corporation. So I was working with General Foods in a program to develop like an orientation program. It was like a management training program, together with other young engineering graduates. And that was fascinating too, because one of my closest friends in the office was a fellow named Sherman. And I remember I had gotten a project that had to do with stress analysis of piping systems and such that were going through some of our projects and such. And I wanted to use Fortran analysis, which was a program, an IBM program, which was the first time anything like that had been done in the office. And I was really concerned about, because I didn't know anything about it, programming and everything, but I was, I learned and just on the job, said, okay, let's try this. And I was saying to Shalom, I said, Shalom, I don't know about this. I'm really concerned. Shalom Lampel had been one of the freedom fighters in Israel. The first war for Israel's independence and such. I don't know, I think Likud or something. And Shalom said, sure. Where I came from, we had to be afraid of bazookas, we had to be afraid of M1s, we had to be afraid of bombs. And say, what are you worried about? I said, all right, Shalom. And that was the encouragement that I kept with me all my life. So I just had to hustle. I was hustling up small construction jobs. And I'm in Brooklyn this time, so we're doing all kinds of little jobs around Brooklyn and such. And then we were doing consulting. I was consulting for state agencies, doing economic development, things of that sort. I was doing business plans for health centers and mental health centers and things. Just hustling. And then I started getting mortgages for developers or small homeowners, not homeowners, but owners of real estate. You know, it's putting doing deals, you know, had to get a mortgage and this. So I started doing mortgages. Finance. You know, went through the books, learned what that was all about. And I developed a relationship with the Dime Bank of Williamsburg. I was pushing stuff through. And then somebody told me, you know what you're doing is not kosher. So I said, oh, okay. So do I want to really become a mortgage broker or not? And by that time I had developed a close relationship with some of the real estate brokers and developers in Brooklyn. And one of them said, listen, I'm opening up a new Century 21 office in Fort Greene. Why don't you manage that for me? So I did that. You know, I went to school, got a salesman's license. I didn't have a broker's license. You know, he had a broker. So I had the salesman's license. And I was running a real estate office out there. Well, you know, in the 70s it was tough. That was a recession also, because the city still was in bankruptcy.
Sure.
So I was making some money. In fact, I was not doing bad. I was doing pretty good. My wife, Essie, at that time, and I were both collectors, art collectors. I bought a painting by Otto Niels from the UC Gallery, which used to be on 132nd Street between Lenox and 7th. I met Essie through a friend of mine. I said, you want to meet my girlfriend? She likes art too. She collects art. So I said, all right, I'll make dinner for you guys. Because at that time I had a house in Fort Greene, had a brownstone in Fort Greene. This was before the city college thing and all, you know. And I said, okay, I'll make dinner for you guys. Come on over to the house. So I met Essie. And when Essie walked into my house, into my parlor room, she saw the painting. He said, I wanted that painting. I said, I went to buy the painting, and they said, it's gone, it's sold. So I told everybody after that, she married me for the painting. Anyway, so we're married, and we're going along, and I'm doing all this hustling, and she's hustling, and we're both hustling. And in the interim, we're doing like Tupperware parties, in a sense, showing people art, showing our friends art out of an apartment that we also had, you know, down in Brooklyn Heights. And then we started actually saying, well, you know, okay, let's make a little money. Let's make some money out of this with the artists. It's a matter of developing appreciation and helping with the artists and make some change in the society. So we got more and more into that. Bought a house in Park Slope, 7 Plaza Street West, right on Grand Army Plaza. Grand house. I'm still hustling now. You know, I mean, I got balls in the air. You know? And both my wife and I, we were on it. We risk takers. We said, yeah, all right. bought that house. It was a two-family, had an apartment downstairs. The tenants we rented out to turned out to be the tenants from hell.
Oh, gosh.
So when the lease was up and they left, I said, you know what, no more tenants. Let's make that a gallery, Plaza Street West. So we made that a gallery and we began to get some traction. And began to make some money. And during that course of time, we would sit in the gallery and look at the artists we have and say, you know, these guys are nice artists and good, they're contemporary artists, you know, at that time. Boy, it'd be our dream if we could really get to meet people like Romy Bearden, Jacob Lawrence, and no Moses. See, Romy Bearden. So we looked him up in the phone book. And we called him. And he answered the phone. We had a nice conversation. I said, you know, nice talking to you. That was it. So my daughter Lisa had a friend in school whose mother at that time she was going to ethical culture on Central Park West. She had a mother who was very involved in the different communities and culture and raising monies and funds and such. And her organization was having a fundraiser. And they had art that was donated by Romy Bearden as part of the fundraising. So we went, Essie and I went with Lisa. We met Romy Bearden, actually met him. And we said, remember we talked? He said, oh, it was you. So here we saw a family involved in art, wanting to do something. And he embraced us. He became our mentor.
Wow.
So we moved from Brooklyn sometime after that to Harlem, and by that time we had really become very close to Romy and his wife, Nanette. And like on my birthday, he would give us a painting. On her birthday, she was a painting. He would give us a painting, not a painting, a print. So we moved to Harlem. So I moved my whole real estate activities to Harlem. At this time now I'm a broker. And I'm selling housing, brownstones. You know, I was concentrating on brownstones. Concentrating on getting black people to buy brownstones in Harlem. This is in the 80s, you know, 87, 89, 90. We had Black Tuesday. Stock market crash. Biggest crash since bang. Fortunately, the prices at home had not gone down as much as the other places. So if you get somebody that had some wherewithal, we could make a sale and make it, you know, make a decent deal out of it. So we're not being done in by the crisis, but just pushing. Making, you know, we were making okay. So I'm doing the real estate. Essie's primarily doing the art. She's, you know, she was what I say. Essie was the outside person. I was inside. Because I'm inside and I'm doing the computers and setting up the books and you know, setting up the systems and all the invoicing is, you know, all automated. I created a program that does a boom. And based on the programming and the applications that I learned from IBM, this, you know, I replicated that in a sense. And when it came to the pricing of the art and setting up the shows, and I was doing all that. And I'm doing the real estate. I'm doing okay. We're doing pretty good. In 2000, Essie dies from cancer. So I'm trying to continue both the real estate and the art. And I realized I really can't do both, because you really have to devote time to both. So I said, okay, this is something that we built together. This is something that's, for us, a legacy. This was our mission. So I said, okay, I'll put the real estate to the side and just concentrate on that, on the gallery. And this is what I've been doing. You know, in the meantime, Romeo died, Nanette died. I had been chairman of the board of the Nanette Dance Company. Actually, Romeo put me into that, you know. And that's what I've been doing since then. And the whole thing with the art, it just happened. Interesting thing about it is, like with Romy, and here's Romy at his peak, and it's near the end, and as his life became closer to the end, his work became incredible, more amazing than ever before, brighter, more colorful, more vibrant. It was amazing. And I remember Romy saying, though, we were talking about it, Romy says, I think I'm beginning to get it. We had dinner one night in Washington, D.C. at the Park Hyatt with Jacob Barnes. And after dinner, we set up this area, like a lounge. And Jacob, he liked Jack Daniels and cigars. And we sat there, it's been like 4 hours drinking and talking. And Jacob said the same thing. Jacob's in his 80s or so, you know. They were talking about the art and how it's, and Jacob said the same thing. I think I'm beginning to get it. So we, the artists, we got to know personally. You know, this is the 60s and 70s. And this is the time of Malcolm X, you know, black Muslims. The art then, much of it was Afrocentric. And the art that began to attract market interest was not as Afrocentric. It was more, it was black, had a black undergirding, but it was more universal in that its message may have been black-centered, but the imagery was not as emphatically black as the Afrocentric artists, you know. So instead of having black figures and in dashiki and things, instead of trying to express your Africanness, the black art that became more commercially accepted, approachable. It was not about the Africanness, but it was about the blackness. And there's a difference. You know? So that's why the art from that period began to lose its audience. Reality is, with the Jacob Barneses, with the Romy Beards, with the Charles Woolstons, with the, just name it. Major collectors, not us, them. You know? I don't see black college graduates coming out with an intent to go out and collect some black art. You know? If they would come out with the intent to buy some black art as they would in terms of, as they do for buying shoes and suits and Beamers and Mercedes and such, you know. I have talking to some friends, sometimes somebody will be talking about a new car or something, you know, they say 40,000, 50,000. So, you know, for that, you can buy some art. You know? But trying to develop that kind of sensibility. And it's not the college students' fault. You know? And particularly in the non-black colleges, the other schools, it's still like a sidebar. It's just like black history has been. It's been a sidebar. You know, well, it's been a couple of sessions on black art. That's what's so important about that museum now.
That's amazing.
That has really thrust black history into a space that can't be ignored.